Welcome to the Prophecy Club, and unfortunately I've got some, I don't want to say bad news, but it's pretty scary stuff. And essentially what I'm about to tell you is that the world seems to be gearing up for a giant war, probably World War III. And I'll say it again, America is at a crossroads. We're at a Y on the road. We can't keep going as we're going. Either we go to the left, we go down toward communism, totalitarian government, or we get enough people praying and we turn to the right, we turn up towards Jesus, toward righteousness, and we clean our house and God will forgive our sins and heal our nation. One or the other. One or the other has to happen. I got this email from a very good friend this morning. Stan, I saw an incredible speaker last night. Her name is Miss Claire Lopez. 20 years as an undercover op with the CIA, 10 years think tank consultant and writer. She speaks 6 languages. Stan, I would interview this lady and put her on a nationwide tour. There were 600 people at the dinner last night. She began her talk with the words, "We are facing a revolution led by the communists." I'll say that again. We are facing a revolution led by the communists. Phase 1 is over. She called it the long march through the institutions, i.e., education, government, social agencies, etc. Phase 2 is the violent phase where the goal, listen carefully, is to overcome law enforcement in as many jurisdictions as possible. Their answer is, quote, a citizens' militia led by Antifa BLM in a pre-World War II Germany, the brown shirts, parenthesis, Antifa, squared off against the black shirts, parenthesis, Nazi Gestapo. The latter won, and Antifa fled to the USA. The USA military will have its hands full. Nearly every minority group has joined together for this conflict, including the Arabs. The CCCP, or the Communists of China, is a huge player providing most of the money, arms, and leadership of the street fighters. The reason I sent that last video that linked Charlie Ward when he's interviewing Mel K was it shows the shaky foundation of the USA stock market. When that goes, taking much of the savings, pensions, and life insurance in its wake, about 80% of America will be completely financially destitute. By the way, I do not normally watch Charlie Ward. Someone sent it to me. People will only keep resisting or fighting if they have hope. Once that is gone, the battle will be lost. Deaths will ensue on a scale that can only be described as apocalyptic. And I've got several here from Hal Turner. May 5th, 2021, headline, France negotiating new Rafale fighter jets for Ukraine to fight Russia. France is ready to sell the Dassault Rafale fighter jets to Ukraine for use. France says against the territories of Donbass and against Russia. Ukraine has not bought a single new jet fighter in 3 decades since the collapse of the Soviet Union, so the Ukraine Air Force is not equipped to carry out such operations. This offer by France to provide modern fighter jets is seen by Russia as gross interference in its regional affairs with Ukraine. All right, now let's pause a second. So, do we really think that this is France trying to make Russia angry or Ukraine trying to make Russia angry? How does Russia see this? I think Russia sees this as America is sticking our finger in their eye. In other words, Russia does not look at Ukraine or France, for that matter. Russia is looking at America, and it makes Russia mad at America. Well, that is what Dmitri was shown with the sleeping bear that would wake up and grow bigger and stronger until finally he could overcome anyone that was coming against him. So this is the early phases, or actually maybe the late phases, of us angering the Russian bear. Next headline. Russia to test, big on the word test, Russia to test 3 Satan II ICBMs, 24 nukes each. U.S. may only have 2 minutes warning if the test is actually an attack. Now, this is a long article, and I might even read the whole thing, because I think it's important for us to know what is actually being planned. Would the attack of America not be the smartest way to do it would be to say openly that you're having a test? only it's not really a test. Instead, it's really attacking America. So that way, we would wait until the very last second before we did anything about it. Okay, May 5th, 2021. Russia has announced it will test 3 of its new Satan II intercontinental ballistic missiles later this year. Now, see, they didn't even give a date, okay? That tells me that later this year, anytime this year, that Russia could conduct this test. That's not really a test. That's really an attack on America. Now, pause just a second. As you recall, said just about every day on this program, Dmitry was told the fall of America would start with an internal revolution in America, started by the communists. Some of the people will start fighting against the government. The government will be busy with internal problems. Then from the oceans, Russia, Cuba, Nicaragua, Central America, Mexico, and 2 other countries will attack and defeat America in one day, in 1 hour, so great riches will come to naught. And I believe what I've run across, what I've put together here, is we're about to see the imminent military takeover of the American government. Now, just like Terry Bennett was told, you'd think it would be bad, you'd think it'd be a coup, but it's actually going to be to help our nation. But that is going to be the total fulfillment of Dmitry's warning that he got back in 1984, and here we are about to see it in 2021. The rest of the prophecy says, then some of the people will start fighting against the government. Well, that would be the people like the BLM and the Antifa folks that don't like the fact that the bad guys are being kicked out. So what we have to do, if we get to keep our nation, brothers and sisters, it is up to us. It's not up to Trump. It's not up to the military. It's up to us. Because what we have to do is pray against those people that are going to be fighting against the government, that they will lose, and that the replacement of the old guard, the replacement of the evil in our nation would be successful, so God could hear from heaven, forgive our sins, and heal our land. But the key is, can we turn from our wicked ways? Well, most nations never have that happen. I believe God has given us the opportunity, the once in a nation's lifetime opportunity, to turn around. Either the arrests take place, America turns from her wicked ways, and then the people that start fighting against the government are quickly put down, and that's only going to happen by prayer. It's not going to happen by a bullet, brothers and sisters. It's going to happen by prayer. And then we can move into perhaps having many more years. Now, let me go back to this article. With this system, if the warheads deploy, the U.S. would only have 2 minutes warning, not enough time to get our missiles out of the silos. Each Satan II ICBM has an 18,000-kilometer range, means they can fire it from Russia. It can go all the way around the Earth, the long way, not the short way. The short way, we've got radar. We're watching for that. But they go the long way, 18,000-kilometer range, and is equipped with, and now listen to this, 24 hypersonic gliders designed to evade all enemy defenses. The test is scheduled for this year and will include a launch at full range, 11,000 miles, and the RS-28 is the most powerful nuke in the world. I'll say that again. The RS-28 is the most powerful nuke in the world. Each RS-28 can carry 10 very large warheads of 800 kilotons each. All right, what is that? Well, the nukes that hit Nagasaki and Hiroshima, the largest one was 4 kilotons. 800 kilotons? 800 kilotons. We're talking about something, one of them would take out the whole Dallas-Fort Worth area. All of it. 800 kilotons? There's a scripture that says that the earth is moved at the taking of Babylon. In other words, when these nuclear bombs all go off within about a 10-minute period, it literally changes the orbit. Maybe that's even what turns us upside down and scatters them abroad that happens there of Isaiah 24 verses 1 and 19. 800 kilotons. Let that sink in. Plus 16 smaller ones, or up to 24 hypersonic boost glide vehicles, each 400 times more destructive than the nukes dropped on Japan. The RS-28 speculated trajectory for this test would be over the South Pole, again the long ways, completely immune to any current missile defense system. In other words, we wouldn't even know it's coming. However, U.S. experts fear that it features a fractional orbit bombardment capability, and this could spell complete disaster for the USA. Okay, so what is that? FOB, fractional orbital bombardment. It goes on to explain. The FOB system was a nuclear weapons delivery system developed in the 1960s by the Soviet Union, one of the first Soviet efforts to use space to deliver weapons. FOBS envisioned launching nuclear warheads into low Earth orbit before bringing them down on their targets. Like a kinetic bombardment system, but the nuclear weapons had several attractive qualities, in that it had no range limit. Its flight path could not reveal the target location, and warheads could be directed to North America over the South Pole, evading detection by NORAD's north-facing early warning systems. The maximum altitude would be around 150 kilometers. Energetically, this would require a launch vehicle powerful enough to be capable of putting the weapon into orbit. However, the orbit was only a fraction of a full orbit, not sustained, and so that there would be much less need to control precise orbit or to maintain it long term. Below is an image to try to explain what's going on. Now, essentially what this does, try to imagine, so the Russians put this up, and instead of it going really, really high like most nukes do, allowing them to be spotted by the radar fairly early, which maybe gives us 30 minutes warning instead of 2 minutes warning, instead, these are in a low Earth orbit. In other words, they're down lower even than satellites, and they just kind of stay up there. Now, it didn't say how long, but my guess is maybe it's 2 or 3 days, maybe it's 2 or 3 months. Maybe they have them circling around our heads right now. And then at any particular time they want to, all of a sudden, they cause them to drop out of that low Earth orbit and hit their targets, and you may only have like 2 minutes warning. Well, we know that that's not the way it happens, because Dmitry was told then from the oceans, Russia, Cuba, in other words, from the oceans. Henry Groover had a vision, and he saw submarines literally coming up. Now, one vision showed them almost on our beaches, still down in the water, but another one showed them literally coming up out of the water up onto the beach, kind of like a whale beaching itself, and then troops coming out, and he saw that the American troops that went down to fight these people coming out of the submarines, the American weapons wouldn't fire. I don't know if that's a God thing, maybe that, or maybe it's sabotage. Maybe it's some insider that replaced the bullets or a bunch of bad bullets. I don't know. But I'm only saying this can't be won by bullets or missiles. This has to be won by prayer. And who do you think is the group of Christians that would even possibly pray for it? Obviously, only those that even believe in it, as in you and I. We're the one. If this is going to be a victory for us, brothers and sisters, we got to pray. That's what, right now, we have got to pray. From the launch site inside Russia, the ICBM is fired. It climbs toward space. However, while it is on its way up, it drops one or more of these FOBS at about 150 miles up. The USA did not have the radar positioned to see it. Even shipborne radar out of the Pacific Ocean off of Russia's coast would not be able to see what may be taking place is an attack. We wouldn't even know, and have no way of finding out early enough to do anything about it. So let's presume the ICBM is fired north toward what would be the USA on the other side, again, the long way, the other side of the world. NORAD early warning radar faces north to catch missiles coming up over the North Pole, but they're fired over the South Pole, you see. That radar would then see the IBM about 1,200 kilometers above Earth. That radar alert is labeled Radar Detection 1 on the image below, but the radar would not know that earlier the same ICBM deployed on its FOBS. So, while the radar watching the ICBM indicates the missile is harmlessly traveling in space, little do we know that the FOBS are also traveling at a much lower, undetectable orbit. No NORAD radar picks up the ICBM earlier because of its altitude. But that same radar cannot see the incoming FOBS, which are at a very much lower orbit. On the image below, which of course you can't see on radio, it shows you that the lower Earth orbit actually gets them delivered faster with less detection. At the earliest inception point of the FOBS, the United States of America would only have 2 minutes warning, and that the FOBS have been deployed and were coming in to bomb our missile silos, decapitating our nation's defense before we could do anything at all about it. Let's presume for a moment that the missiles are, quote, test launched toward the South Pole as described in Russia's announcement. Let's also assume that they deploy the FOBS about 150 miles up. As before, we do not have radar capable of knowing the FOBS are on the way, but this time, the FOBS are traveling south. They orbit around the South Pole and begin their trek northward from there. So the United States does not have any long-distance warning radar facing south, none. We wouldn't even know these FOBS were on the way until they came up over the Gulf of Mexico and started detonating from south to north, destroying our entire country. Remember, each of these three that they're going to set off, each of these three Satan II missiles carry 24 hypersonic nuclear warhead glide vehicles. Remember, too, Russia will be, quote, testing 3 of them. So do the math. That's 72 nuclear warheads. We're talking about 72 nuclear warheads as in the 400 times what hit Japan or the 800 kilotons. As in, he says, that's enough to destroy every major city, population over 1 million in the United States, as well as every major military base in the country, all in one fell swoop. And that is not coming out of the submarines like what Dimitri and Henry and Bree Keaton were all shown. They were all shown that it came out of the oceans. Now let's go to the next article. Headline. Once again, Hal Turner. U.S. military plane travels supersonic over Europe to Middle East, shuts off transponder more, and, quote, nuke sniffer airborne off Australia. Now, if we haven't already been doing enough to make the bear mad, this is about to make her really mad. May 4th, 2021. An aircraft identified only as, I'm not trying to say that, suddenly appeared on radar as it entered European airspace, flew at supersonic speed of 891 miles an hour over the UK, France, and into the Mediterranean, across Israel, into Jordan, where it went dark. That's right, it turned off its beacon, its transponder. So why does it maintain supersonic speed over the UK, France, Mediterranean, over Israel and Jordan, and then go dark by shutting off its transponder in the Jordanian airspace? He says something's up. More unusual, U.S. military aircraft is now detected. It goes on to give you what kind of aircraft. He says the specialized aircraft designed to specifically be a nuke sniffer. Its mission is to collect samples from the atmosphere for the purpose of detecting and identifying nuclear explosions. Or could it be that this is another thing that is making the Russians angry? Let me pose this to you. Could it be that I can't say Biden administration because I think they cheated. I don't think they were elected. But whatever's in that administration right now, could it be that part of the threat, trying to get the military to stop the arrests of their people, is to say we're going to attack Russia, and then Russia will attack back and destroy America? And that could be the ultimate threat. Matter of fact, that may be the reason Russia ultimately does attack us, is because we make Russia mad, just like we are doing. Next headline, U.S. and NATO exercise. Oh, listen to this one. U.S. and NATO exercise on Russian border with 28,000 troops. Hal Turner, May 7. United States and its NATO allies will conduct the largest military, quote, exercise in 30 years, right smack on the border of Russia this month. At the precise time, the conflict between Russia and Ukraine is ratcheting up to the dangerous levels. Did you hear that? So not only are we flying really, really fast airplanes right up next to Russia to make them mad, so not only are we hearing that Russia is preparing to have an exercise firing 72 nuclear missiles right over our heads, but now we are participating in a giant NATO, quote, exercise right on Russia's border. I'm saying that we are almost on purpose egging on a fight. We are making an aggravated, very powerful, very strong bear very mad at us. And I'm going to say that the Russian attack on America could possibly happen this year. Let's go on to the next paragraph. According to a press release from the military, the exercise dubbed, quote, Defender Europe, will involve the following. May. The bulk activities will occur with training events across more than 30 training areas in 12 countries and encompassing several linked and associated exercises. Here they are. Immediate response. More than 5,000 troops of 11 countries will spread out across 31 training areas to conduct live firing exercises. A joint logistics over-the-shore operation will also occur. Saber Guardian. More than 13,000 service members from 19 countries will conduct live firing exercises and air and missile defense operations, plus a large-scale medical evacuation. I'm telling you, they're preparing for war. Swift response. The swift response will include airborne operations in Estonia, Bulgaria, Romania, involving more than 7,000 troops from 11 countries. African Lion. Nearly 5,000 military personnel train on medical readiness, perform large-scale live-fire exercises, and conduct air, marine, and forward command post training exercises. Steadfast Defender. A new series of NATO exercises focused on the transatlantic reinforcement of Europe and NATO's capability to respond rapidly to the full spectrum of threats. It is likely, no coincidence, that all of these exercises by NATO are coming at precisely the same time, or I'm going to say the wrong time, precisely the same time as Ukraine is massing over 100,000 troops all along the borders of breakaway states Luhansk and Donetsk, both of which want to leave Ukraine to join Russia. In other words, America is sticking our finger in the eye of the bear. We are jabbing the bear. We are throwing sand in his eyes. We are making the bear furious. Now, did you hear anything about this on the news? Nope. Not even Fox News talks about it. The positioning of so many NATO troops, armored personnel carriers, tanks, artillery, planes, and more will make Russia wonder if NATO, listen to this, if NATO plans to join any Ukraine effort to take Luhansk and Donetsk by force. While Ukraine is not a member of NATO, it is no great leap to see that the West, Europe, and the USA want Ukraine within their sphere of influence to gain military advantage over Russia. Will the Russians simply sit back and allow this to take place, or will they move Russian army troops that have massed along the Ukraine border and simply wipe out Ukraine and NATO? Or, I'm going to say the third one, or will they launch a surprise nuclear attack on America? So right in the middle of us almost being in a war with Russia through Ukraine and France and all these other countries, all of a sudden, this dream from Donna Rigney's husband sounds pretty plausible. So all of a sudden, in the middle of this, there is a military battalion of tanks, Humvees, with roof-mounted machine guns and armored personnel carriers with cannons going down Pennsylvania Avenue right up to the Capitol, the Supreme Court, and the White House. They go in, pull all of the personnel, the policemen, the Secret Service men, all of the guardians of those particular buildings out, and then they go in and they raid the place. In other words, we're talking about an internal revolution. We're talking about an imminent military takeover of America. All of a sudden, just like the prophecy said, the fall of America would start with an internal revolution. So there's an internal revolution in America. We've already made the bear mad, and now all of a sudden the bear says, hey, the USA is having a big problem. They're having an internal revolution. I mean, their military is actually fighting against the government to kick out Biden and to bring in a new government. Now would be a wonderful time to attack. Do you see what I'm saying? All of this prophecy that was given to us back in 1984 by a man that sat on an electric chair twice to get the warning, all of a sudden, it might not be 40 years off. It might not be 4 years off. It might not be a year off. I mean, I'm saying I feel like I've got to warn you that with what we're seeing right now, we are making the bear angry. Let me read part of that again. The Russian bear began to grow. Soon it was larger than the forest floor and grew larger and continued to become angrier. See, that's what we're doing right now. We are making the bear angry. It then began to paw the ground so that when its paw hit the ground, the earth would shudder. The bear continued to devastate all that stood in its path, meaning NATO, America, Europe, France, all of them going against Russia. Russia's going to run over all of them. Stood in its path until it came upon some men with sticks trying to fend it off. That's NATO. By this time, the bear had grown so large, it simply crushed the men underfoot and continued to rampage. At first, they thought the bear was dead, the man said. But as it would begin to stir once again, they will consider it harmless, and that's where we are right now. Suddenly, it will grow strong once more with purpose and violence, and God will blind the eyes of those who continue to trample on the sacrifice of Christ's blood. That's us. Tell my people the days are numbered and the sentence has been passed. Well, if God is not willing to delay that, then I'm going to have to say, brothers and sisters, I cannot guarantee that America will make it out of this year without the Russians taking this nation out. Our only hope is in prayer. Our only hope. We've got to fast, we've got to pray, we've got to cry out to God, or we're about to lose our nation, and it's going to get really, really tough. Hal Turner had a vision. May 2, he says, I was awakened from a very, very deep sleep by what I thought was the loudest explosion sound I'd ever heard or felt. There was no warning, it just hit. Except when I opened my eyes, everything was normal, no panic, no damage, nothing, which was how I realized I'd been dreaming or something. So I closed my eyes and went back to sleep and instantly went back into the dream vision. It was as if the inside of my eyelids were a screen and I was watching it. At this point in the dream vision, I walked to the back door of my condo, looked east toward New York City because there was a golden white light coming from that direction. It wasn't the sun. For a very brief time, as the explosion dimmed, it was this color, and it's a bright white yellowish. Shortly, the light started to fade, and I could see the outline of a nuclear mushroom cloud. There were two sections, one about midway up the shaft cloud, coming up from the ground, then a clearing, then there was a crooked, skewed shaft going higher. The two parts were about equal in width, but the top part was thicker than the bottom. I opened my eyes again, and it was all quiet. I think that God just lit Hal Turner's fire. All of a sudden, Hal Turner is now a believer in all of this warning about all of the Russians possibly attacking America. Now, he may not understand what you and I understand, but it has lit his fire. Also, the more people get more of these warning dreams like this is a vision, not a dream. The more people get them tells us that it's close. So this whole broadcast is trying to say this one point. I cannot promise you that America is going to make it through 2021 and the Russians not take us out. It could be that close. I want to think it's not, but I'm trying to say, everybody, we got to fast, we got to pray, and we got to pray for this nation. We got to pray that the arrests do take place and that the protests, some of the people fighting against the government, are quickly put down, so that the Russians, and we need to pray that the Russians will not be angry at America and not attack America. When a nuclear device goes off, it produces an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse, and it fries every computer chip unless they're protected. The good news is EMPshield.com has devices a military testing facility says are 100% accurate to protect against EMP, solar flares, lightning, power surges, backed by a 10-year warranty and a $25,000 insurance policy. And they come with simple installation instructions for home, vehicles, RV, and electric generators. You can have electricity in a blackout. EMPshield.com. Use the promo code PROPHECY for a $50 gift card. This helps Prophecy Club. That's EMPshield.com. Promo code PROPHECY for a $50 gift card. EMPshield.com. EMPshield.com. Everyone is in a panic. No one is taking credit cards or dollar bills anymore, but they are taking silver coins. Call CornerstoneAssetMetals.com. Mention Prophecy Club.